The results from key races, including Arizona, still coming in on this Monday morning. Democratic candidate for governor in Arizona, Katie Hobbs, has a 1-point lead over Republican candidate Kari Lake. Little more than 26,000 votes separate the two, with 98% of the votes so far tallied. Former President Trump is scheduled to formally announce tomorrow that he is running for president in 2024. At least that's the likely announcement. But after Republicans underperformed in these midterms, some of Trump's allies reportedly calling on him to delay that announcement at least until after the Georgia Senate runoff election, which is set for December 6th between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. The Washington Post is reporting in private conversations among donors, operatives, and other 2024 presidential hopefuls, a growing number of Republicans trying to seize what they believe may be their best opportunity to sideline Trump and use a new generation of party leaders or bring them in. Joining me now to discuss this, Stephanie Grisham. She served as press secretary and communications director during the Trump administration, also served as chief of staff for then First Lady Melania Trump. Good morning to you, Stephanie, once again. A fracture in the Republican Party, is that what we're seeing?
I think so. The voters clearly have spoken, and it's clear that Donald Trump is not a kingmaker anymore. So I think my party, the Republican Party, is doing some soul searching right now to determine, are we going to listen to the voters who I think are soundly rejecting chaos and divisive language, or are we going to stick with just one man, and that's Donald Trump?
But that one man has a lot of power and is not easily swayed, even if his Republican allies are telling him to delay. So what is the chance, the likelihood that Trump does not announce tomorrow night?
I mean, honestly, I give it a 70-30 right now that he will announce. Though, again, I've been cautioning everyone I know that I think there's still a very slight possibility he could just use tomorrow night as a chance to talk about how the elections were stolen and to just generally rant about, how he was wronged all of the time. I imagine he will announce, because I'm hearing he's asking a bunch of people to come down and stand with him. I think that's going to be interesting as well, to see who of the electeds, the newly electeds, the people that he backed will stand behind him when there's so much divisiveness right now.
Well, and there's a lot of question about party leadership with Kevin McCarthy as well. If the GOP takes control of the House, some are wondering who will lead that charge. And it is looking less and less likely like Kevin McCarthy has the support needed to do so. What's your take?
Well, I said that last week on NewsNation. I said I really think that McCarthy's going to be in trouble, and I stand by that. I think that's very clear. He's going to have a heck of a time if he does become speaker because of these small margins, and he's going to have a lot of small groups to have to talk to. So it remains to be seen what he's promising people. I'm hearing he's just taking a ton of phone calls right now and listening, not promising much just yet. I'm hearing that Andy Biggs from my home state of Arizona is going to jump into the speaker race, which I find very, very interesting. I worked with him extensively when I was in politics in Arizona, and he is a diehard election denier, MAGA guy. So I think that really puts a wrinkle in things too.
Well, thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.